This is my hometown. It's called Youngstown, and it's in the state of Ohio near the Pennsylvania boundary. In Youngstown, we make steel. We make steel and talk steel. Look down any street in town, and you'll see the mills at the end of it. There are 25 miles of them along the Mahoning River, and today they're busy day and night. Every 8 hours, the shifts change. 15,000 men to the shift. Steel. Only a few hours ago, it was iron ore. Now it's finished and on its way to become a part of the new world it's building.
That's Youngstown, Ohio, one of our former great cities. Now, I'm sure you've heard this story before. You know, former steel town goes kaput, but you haven't heard it quite like the way we're going to talk about it here. It's insightful, eye-opening. It might make you feel betrayed by our government. This is what much of Youngstown looks like today. This is the north end of town, which used to be a bustling neighborhood on the fringes of cornfields and open land. Now, today, it is open land and is on the fringe of society. Yes, much of this area was once filled with homes, where kids played in the street, where family barbecues were held, where church bells rang out on Sunday. But those times passed a long time ago. A lot of people left Youngstown ages ago, off for better opportunities and safer cities to raise their kids. And the reason for that is our own damn fault. And this is something that we're headed for a lot more today, unfortunately. Now, if you know Ohio, you know that if this was winter, this place would be all gray and brown and look very postmodern. It would look far worse than it does here. On this day, it's nice and sunny, so Youngstown looks about as spruced up as you'd ever see it, like when Grandma puts on her best face for church. Youngstown is one of many former steel towns in the Rust Belt that have lost their way. Back in the 50s and 60s, this was a bustling community where steel mills ran at all hours of the day and where people could make a good life. But then in the 70s, steel mills began to shut down, resulting in a catastrophic loss of jobs. The big blow came on what locals call Black Monday, when in 1977, Youngstown Sheet and Tube shut down, immediately putting 5,000 people out of work. The ripple effect was severe, and by 1983, Youngstown had lost 40,000 manufacturing jobs. Since 1959, Youngstown has lost 60% of its population. At one point, there were 160,000 people here. Today, there's less than 65,000. All the new vacant buildings brought blight and depressed property values, but for years, officials hoped the problem would just go away. They tried to bring in new jobs, like a big blimp plant and car manufacturing plants. None materialized, repelled in part by corruption. In its heyday in the 1930s, Youngstown called itself the City of Homes, a place where a working-class man could be the master of his own castle. In those years, people dealt with the vacant houses by burning them down, but you can't do that forever. So a new plan was unveiled that would demolish the abandoned structures here. So far, Youngstown has raised more than 2,000 vacant homes, but more than 5,000 vacant structures remain. Can you imagine that? 5,000 empty buildings in a small town like this? Today, Youngstown's vacancy rate is 10 times above the national average. Homes here average about 38,000 apiece, which is just about as low as you'll find in America today. A lot of the vacant structures here are owned by out-of-state folks or even international investors like those in China. A lot of the schools here are broken. They're just bad. Good jobs are hard to come by, but you knew that already. Youngstown's been called the poorest place in the country for communities above 65,000 people. The average home here brings in about $25,000 a year, and 4 in 10 people live at or below the poverty line. 6 in 10 kids here live in poverty. The healthcare system's terrible, and drug use is rampant. Man, there are just homes on every block that are just missing, that are run down, that are abandoned. It's really sad here. So how did this place get like this? Well, you could say this was Youngstown's fault, since they failed to diversify their economy, putting themselves at risk for a shift in industry trends. And that's what happened. The decline of most of the manufacturing jobs was due primarily to technological advances and industry trends. And even if they brought steel back because production technologies changed, they wouldn't need nearly as many people. But Youngstown does serve as a warning to today's communities that rely heavily on manufacturing and energy and all the jobs that have been eliminated or moved overseas. When you allow jobs to leave the country for good, you're going to see this as a result. While Joe Biden says he's against encouraging corporations to move their operations overseas, his actions say differently. He plans to raise corporate taxes to pay for poor people to collect more unemployment and hand out more stimulus money and create what many Americans fear is an emerging form of communism. Is this what Joe Biden wants? Places that look like this? And eliminating jobs so people become dependent on welfare and housing and the government? Because that's what's happening in many places like this in the USA. You take away good, hard-working jobs and you move them overseas, and folks can't work. If you decimate entire industries because of the environment without any proof they cause climate change, well, then big parts of your economy will go to shit. There's all sorts of comments from people who feel the same way. Folks like you that have been commenting on many other videos I've done, and they share the same concerns. So yeah, Youngstown, the reason I wanted to go there was because it's been called the poorest place in the country many times. It's clearly run down. I mean, there's parts of town on, I think it was the north end, that are like raised, like where they just couldn't do it. I mean, it's pretty rough. I mean, I didn't really feel dangerous when I was there, but clearly there's abandonment and poverty all over. What happened to Youngstown? Why is it like that?
So in the 70s, I think, they call it like Black Tuesday, where Youngstown Sheet and Tube closed and a bunch of jobs left in the steel mill industry. And then the city kind of just has been declining since then. And, like recently, a major employer, General Motors, kind of left the area. So there's just really not too many jobs there. And, like I was saying, from my personal experience, like I graduated college with an accounting degree, figuring, hey, it's going to be easy to find a job. And it's, that's not really the case. You're like kind of competing against a lot of people for the little bit of jobs there. And, if you look at the tax, like the local income tax rates in Ohio too, Youngstown's like the highest. And I don't think they're spending that money efficiently either. Like the roads, I don't know where you drove around and stuff, but like the roads are terrible. The infrastructure is terrible. It's just, yeah.
For sure. Like the whole north end, like coming in off the main drag there were pockets on the north end of Youngstown where like houses had been leveled, like you see in Detroit and in other communities where
Right.
They were just abandoned so long that they became an eyesore and they were a nuisance. I think Youngstown has leveled like several hundred structures, maybe more.
Right.
So I saw that. And then there's pockets up there that are hanging on. It's weird to see like one house on a block and then you've got no homes left that are all overgrown now at this point.
Yeah. One of my wife's cousins, grew up in Youngstown his whole life. He's in his late 70s, kind of refused to move. And it ended up just being cheaper for him to buy like all the houses on his block to kind of make it a little bit safer of a place. He says people break into him all the time. A lot of the houses, he just kind of lets them go. He has no use for them or anything. Like pipes are gone. People catch them on fire. It's a pretty rough area.
And then, on the southeast side where I saw, it was just rundown homes, also abandonment. It's very clear that a lot of those people are poor. I guess, is it dangerous when you were there? Crime and drugs, how bad was it in Youngstown?
So, I've never felt like threatened or anything, but there are some, like I had some friends who lived on like off-campus housing, but kind of close to the university over there. And, you'd be hanging out 2 a.m. or something and you hear gunshots. That was pretty common. I never would really say I've been in situations where I felt unsafe, but, I probably, driving around over there, it's common not to stop at red lights and stuff.
Right. And did drugs take over like they did in places like Dayton and Chillicothe?
Yeah, I think there was a pretty big heroin epidemic there for a little bit. I've never really seen it too much. Occasionally on campus, sometimes, when I went to college there, I'd see like syringes There's like a Taco Bell, like where you find them quite a bit. And I've heard stories from other people where, they were in there and they saw some guy like overdose in the bathroom. But like I said, where I grew up, it was kind of like one of the wealthier suburbs. I mean, you really wouldn't see that anywhere near there. Just more or less closer to the city is like where it was a problem.
What kind of reputation did Youngstown have growing up 30 miles away?
Not a good one. I talked to like my parents and stuff who grew up in the area, and they're like, it was, pretty wild. Like when we were kids, it was kind of like the China, like manufacturing hub. It's just, you go towards the city and, your car's going to get dirty from like the, soot released from the steel mills and stuff. And they're like, yeah, like in the 80s and stuff, it came pretty bad. A lot of crime and stuff. I guess.
Is there optimism that they're going to fix that place?
I would say no. I don't think there's much hope for the area, personally. The major employers are a couple hospitals and the university, and prior to 2018, General Motors. So, like 1/3 of the good-paying jobs left the area. If one of those hospitals closes, or there's labor shortage at the university, I don't really know what else you can do.
They're trying in Youngstown. They're continuing to tear down old abandoned homes and dilapidated buildings downtown. When there's enough money, they add new buildings and they try to lure in new businesses and entertainment. Residents here have formed dozens of community action groups to put energy into making their city great again. But it's going to take a change in how we do business as a country to not only help bring places like Youngstown back, but to prevent future Youngstowns. We can't send all our jobs overseas and bow to foreign leaders when it comes to trade. We can't raise taxes on companies to pay for people who want to play the system. Say what you want about the Trump administration, but its focus was to bring back good American jobs to prevent a further fraying of our society. Places just like this. As I was leaving Youngstown, I passed a church on the outskirts of town. Please pray for us, the sign read. Hopefully, prayer isn't the answer here, because we know how often prayers go unanswered.
We've proved we can lick production problems. We've got the equipment, the science, everything it takes to get the job done. But when the war is over, we're going to have other problems. We know about that in Youngstown. We've had it here before. There were times when there was no smoke in the sky. The mills were quiet. The street full of men, angry, questioning, wondering. We're beginning to understand that these things don't just happen in one place. They happen everywhere. We're thinking that all this production all over the world that's doing such a job in a war can do a job in peace too, if we can just learn to work together.
Hey guys, so if anything I just talked about upset you or made you sad or mad, well then do something about it. Call your local leaders and demand change. Chip in and help those in need. Make your community better, because communities don't get better without hard work and determination. America's a great place. It just needs some more love and pride.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.
And are you looking to move and need advice? I do consulting. That's right. I'll sit down and talk about where the next perfect place for you and your family should be. I do it all the time. Together, let's find you a new home that's safe and checks all your boxes. You can get my email in the description to find out how I can help you find your perfect relocation. And I can also help you find your new house, too. Email me and I'll work with you on not just helping you figure out where to move, but I can help you find your perfect home, too. That's right. Someone's a realtor now. Who wants to deal with a realtor they don't know when you can have me help you, right?